In today's episode, we're going to change the legend of the Hitchhiker of South Carolina 107, but first, did you know that you can support the channel now over at theappalachiansun.com by buying a t-shirt? There are several designs, all printed on organic cotton. If you're going to be spending your hard-earned money to support me, I want you to have the best quality product that you can get. I thoroughly enjoy the shirts. I went through several different printers and tried several different types of shirts to find the right one. So if you want to support me and help feed my critters, over at theappalachiansun.com, you can support by purchasing a shirt, or you can donate through the link on my Linktree, available below in the description. Now, back to the story. Legend has it that in 1950, a man named Larry Stevens set off from Greenville, South Carolina in his black and yellow private plane and set out to see the sunset over the mountains of Oconee County, South Carolina. Larry was described as being average height, blonde, and with an attractive, albeit gaunt look about him. Before the flight, Larry meticulously did his pre-flight inspection, refilled on fuel, and took to the sky flying west toward the rolling hills. Larry was completely at peace and exhilarated that he had managed to time his whole day perfectly as he approached the mountains at what photographers refer to as the golden hour, when all the greens and golds are at their peak brilliance. Larry flew toward the sun until he was satisfied with the beauty of Appalachia, and then he decided to turn around and make his course back to Greenville. Unfortunately, the weather in Appalachia is unpredictable, and as Larry was making his way back over the mountains, he found himself in a serious storm. As the rain beat down on the window of the plane, Larry was trying his best to keep calm. There wasn't supposed to be bad weather, he kept repeating in his mind, but here it was, pounding down on the window, and the thing terrifying him the most is that he wasn't certified to fly by his instrumentation alone. Larry's spatial disorientation began to grow, but he thought that if he held the controls diligently, he'd push through the storm. Sadly, Larry crashed his plane just 22 miles north of Walhalla, South Carolina, off of South Carolina State Road 107. A plane flying over the next morning located the yellow wreckage in the forest, and a recovery party was formed, but the body of Larry Stevens was never found. Not long after the accident, rumors began that on rainy nights when traveling down SC-107, that folks were picking up a hitchhiker at Moody Spring, a natural spring in the mountainside along the road. But the weird thing is the guy would ask to get out only 2 miles up the road at a scenic overlook and vanish as he stepped out of the car. The other version of the story is that he gets picked up at the overlook and asked to get out at Moody Spring and vanishes as he steps away from the car. For 73 years, people have been telling this story, but Larry Stevens never existed. Well, you probably wouldn't be surprised that Larry Stevens never existed if you don't believe in the haints and hollers of Appalachia. I've searched the census and NTSB reports for every plane crash in South Carolina, but there is no record of Larry Stevens or his plane crash in the mountains of Walhalla, South Carolina. In my research, however, scouring NTSB reports for plane crashes in Appalachia, I came across something far more bone-chilling than the story of Larry Stevens. On March 10, 1943, Flight Officer Richard Brooke, pilot from Lima, Ohio, Second Lieutenant Earl Monroe, co-pilot from Bolivar, New York, Second Lieutenant Philip Graziano, navigator from Lawrence, Massachusetts, Staff Sergeant Harvey Capelman, engineer of Blanchard, Idaho, and Sergeant Michael Sekel, radio operator from Buffalo, New York, were aboard an Army Air Corps B-25 from Meridian, Mississippi, to the Donaldson Army Air Base in Greenville, South Carolina, when they crashed into the mountain 200 yards north of where Larry Stevens supposedly crashed. Though the plane was reported missing the very next day, for 11 days the wreckage lay silent in the forest until it was discovered by a 15-year-old Sheb Crane when his horse was spooked coming across pieces of bodies and plane. There were no survivors. 71 years after the B-25 crashed, the teenage boys who first found the wreckage came back, now in their late 80s, and paid to have a monument created, placed alone out there in the middle of nowhere near the famous Moody Spring and scenic overlook that the Hitchhiker of SC-107 demands to stay between. Police, Park rangers and city officials of Walhalla, South Carolina have heard this story for over 70 years. On a rainy night, you can pick up a hitchhiker wearing a trench coat with muddy boots, and he requests to get out at Moody Spring or the Scenic Overlook. Larry Stevens did not exist, but 5 military service members very much existed and lost their lives in the exact vicinity of this legendary haunting. If there is a down pilot hitchhiker haunting a rural stretch of mountain road, I want to believe that it's Flight Officer Richard Brooke wearing his 1940s Army-issued trench coat and muddy boots, demanding to stay between the 2 wayfinding points while he diligently searches for his fallen brothers. Thanks for watching, and remember, time waits for no man.